Welcome to Adoption Side by Side podcast, because no one should have to walk the adoption journey alone. I'm Steph.
And I'm Andrea. We walk the journey together, and we want to walk it with you, if you'll have us.
Today we have a friend of mine. Her name is Jodi. She has actually messaged me and said if there was any time that we would like to hear her story, that we could do that. And so we took her up on that offer. Her story is a little different from other ones that we've heard in recent months with the podcast. Her children have been adopted through the foster to adopt program. So she has a beautiful little girl and a beautiful little boy that are siblings by blood. Correct, Jodi?
Yes.
Okay. So just thank you so much for being here today. And we would just like to start off with, what led you to explore the foster care system initially?
Little background. I had a stillborn child, and after that caused me to have severe scarring in my uterus. So I was unable to ever have children of my own after that happened. That was with my first husband. I should say this is both my husband and I's second marriage.
Okay.
He had a child with his previous wife when he was in his 20s. So he was very young, and she had already had a child. So she didn't want any more. So when he was in his 20s, he had a vasectomy.
Okay.
Obviously, they didn't end up together. I didn't end up with my ex-husband. So when we got married, we both knew that, we wanted another child. So we had considered possibly, more surgeries for me. It would be a surgery for him. But in the end, we finally decided, let's look into the foster care system, because I had some friends that had adopted via foster care. And we just thought that would be, the best route for our family.
So would you say that adoption was always part of the plan when you began fostering? Or were you kind of open to both? Maybe you would just foster for a time, or was your hope always that you would adopt?
Our hope was always that we would be able to adopt. When we were getting approved for the process, we were upfront with the agency in the fact that, our end game was that we wanted to adopt. So we had talked with our caseworkers about them placing us with children that were either already legally free because of termination of parental rights happening, or cases that looked like it was heading that way.
Sure.
So then, since you had that mindset already, did you have a particular age range, or did you want siblings, or were you just open to whatever that they brought to the table for you?
Originally, we wanted one child. We did have an age range. It was 0 to 5, just because of the age of my stepson at the time. We didn't want to adopt a child that would be older than him.
Okay.
So that was our age range we settled on. And we had originally decided that because we already had a boy in the house, we would like a girl. But God had other plans for us. So.
That's a very common theme on our podcast.
I bet, yeah.
So then, I guess with that initial paperwork with your agency, were there questions that you were able to answer that said that, like, you were leaning more towards a girl and you wanted this age group? Like, for us, when we were adopting an infant, they had like the questions and things that we answered that kind of gave what we thought we wanted. Is that the same thing on the foster to adopt application, I guess, that you gave them like an idea of what you were wanting?
Yes, I think it's a similar process in where we had to decide, what medical issues we were willing to take, what ethnicities, what backgrounds, we had to have a home study. It's a lot of the same things that you guys went through with your process.
Okay. How many cases did you have prior to your children that you have now? So how many foster children were in your care before you got to them?
We were certified. Our home was open for almost a year before we got our first placement. At first, and I should say that we switched agencies halfway through because we weren't getting any placement calls for the longest time. So we actually switched from our county to a private agency.
Okay.
And that's when we started getting calls. We had our first placement was 5-year-old twin girls. And our second placement was an 8-year-old girl. And then our third placement, we had a 1-month-old.
Okay.
And then we got the children that we eventually adopted.
Okay.
Stephanie, I'm sure, knows the answer to this question. Is this all through PA foster system, or are you in a different state?
PA.
Okay, I thought so. I was like,
Yes,
I just realized you were
PA.
talking. I was like, I didn't know which state. So, okay. So in that adoption process, then, so they were siblings. Did they come to you as siblings, or was this you had one and another was placed with you?
Well, as I said, we had originally decided we just wanted one child at a time. But when we started getting calls for placements, we found out that that was an anomaly.
Okay.
You know, we were definitely getting calls way outside of our preferred age range, multiple children. I think we got calls for sibling groups of 4 at one point.
My.
And so my husband and I talked and said, you know, if we really want to make this happen, I think we're going to have to say yes to siblings, because the foster care system is just loaded with siblings. And of course, they always try to place them with each other whenever possible. So eventually we said, okay, we will be okay with siblings, but we'd still like to stay within our age range. So
did you find that the agency with that was okay when you were saying like, no, we only want one and we would prefer it to be a girl? Were they, I guess, respecting that even though they were still calling you with other ones? Or were they just constantly trying to place the children that they needed homes for?
I think that the agencies are completely overwhelmed. There aren't enough foster homes for as many children that are coming into the system. So we were definitely getting calls all over the place for, you know, like I said, teenagers especially. We got a lot of calls for teenagers and sibling groups of teenagers and older children. So, I mean, I think they understood why we said no to placements like that we just couldn't accept them because we didn't have room and we just felt that it wasn't a fit for our family. So they did respect that when they made the calls. They kept calling us. So
okay.
And do you feel comfortable sharing what age your children were when they first were placed in your home?
Sure. They were barely 3 and 1.
Okay. And what was the time frame in their case from when you first had them enter your home to when they were legally adopted?
My daughter, who is older, she had been in the foster care system since she was 10 months old.
Okay.
My son, who was 1 when he came to us, had been in it his whole life.
Gotcha. They
had been bounced around from several foster families, placed with a family member for a while. I think about a year they were placed with a family member, a biological family member. And then that person was deemed to be unfit. So then they were placed back in just general foster care. And then eventually they came to us when she was, I'm trying to think. They came to us in July and she had turned 3 in April.
Okay.
So she had been in foster care since she was 10 months old.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. And then from the time frame that they came to us in July of 2020, we adopted in April of 2022.
Okay.
So it was a week before her 5th birthday that we finalized adoption.
What an amazing birthday present in a way, you know, for all of you. So with that, were they always together? Like, I know she was in the system prior since she was older, but when he was born, was he immediately placed in the same home that she was in, or was there a time period that they weren't together? How did that part work? If you even know.
I do know because I've dug into their history.
Okay.
I've talked with CYS and their CASA, and we kind of pieced together.
Okay.
My daughter especially's life with all of the different placements. There was one point where they were placed back with the biological parents very briefly. And that was when my son was first born. And then when he was 2 months old, they were removed again. So I should say he was in care almost all of his life.
Okay.
And now I forget what you originally asked me, Steph.
were they always together? But I guess they were
Mm.
if for 2 months he was with bio
Yeah.
family, they would have been together. That's good too, because you always hear about the stories of siblings that are split for whatever reason, whether it's for their safety or other
Right.
children's safety, but that they've spent their lives together.
Yes, they've always been together. And they do have other siblings out there,
Okay.
half siblings. And then there's one full sibling that's actually almost a year younger than my son.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
We do have, that child is with an adoptive family.
Okay.
And we do have contact with them
Okay.
so that at least the children can have that
Right.
bond as they grow up. Yeah.
What part would you say of the foster to adopt journey surprised you the most?
I would say at first it was not getting the placement calls.
Mhm.
Because, and there is such a need for foster families, but then it was like, well, here we are, approved, willing, and we weren't getting any calls. And so that was really surprising to me. But I don't know, that might have just been the particular agency we were with at the time.
Right.
Do you think any of that had to do with the pandemic that was happening around that same time? Like, do you think that played a factor in it?
Well, this was 2019.
Oh, so
that
it
we
was
were-
before
So
that.
it was before COVID.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a good year before COVID that we were, approved.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I don't know then. All right.
We actually got more calls during COVID than we ever
Oh.
had. Even when we were placed with our children, we were still getting calls, but we didn't have room
Yeah.
Right.
for
Okay.
any
Right.
other kids at the time. So
Right.
Right. And so with that part of the foster to adopt, you're saying you didn't have room. What did you have to have in order to foster 1, 2, 3? Like, what did that part of it look like?
So there's certain state rules. If you have siblings under the age of 5 of opposite sexes, they can share a bedroom up until age 5. After age 5, they have to have separate bedrooms.
Okay.
So we at the time did not have enough bedrooms to take on any more foster kids.
Mhm.
So
Is any of that based on how large your home is, or is it really primarily focused on if you have enough space for them to have a private sleeping area?
it's really just based on the sleeping area.
Okay.
Like if you have, say, 2 females that aren't biologically related, but they're 8 and 10,
Mm-hmm.
they can share a bedroom.
Okay.
But like if you have a sibling that's a boy that's 8 and a sister that's 3,
Right.
they can't share a bedroom. It's like the Pennsylvania law.
Okay.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah.
No, and that makes sense
Mhm.
just for everybody's safety.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And we actually built a bedroom in our basement for my stepson.
Mm.
So when my daughter turned 5, which I said was a week before adoption, they would each have their own room.
Gotcha.
So
Right.
Yep.
No.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. What was the easiest part of the process for you and why?
I would say, the easiest part, although it was definitely very lengthy, was the approval process. Just, I like doing paperwork. I'm a very organized, by the book kind of person. So, that was easy for me. The home study, like everybody, of course, I freaked out about and was like super cleaning everything.
It's not just us.
Yeah.
It's not just you.
That's
no, I
another
was, like,
reoccurring theme.
It is. And Steph, we did the same thing as you did. We painted.
I still don't know why I did that. I still don't know why I felt that room needed painted. It looked perfectly fine.
I mean, I
Perfectly fine.
I painted a wall in baby's room.
You did.
I did it too. I didn't do it before the home study. I did it later on, but I still did it before he came. So
I did it the
you
day
know.
before.
That might
We
be
did
it.
it.
That might be
We
a
did it
little
about, I think, a week before our home study. But yeah, I honestly, like, for me, that was the easiest part, except for
Right.
the stressing about, is my house going to like pass this inspection, even though there was no reason it wouldn't. But I just remember, like, I was so nervous about the home study, and they came in and looked around briefly, flushed the toilet, ran the water to make sure we had running water.
Okay.
And that to me was like just kind of funny, but I was like, she's flushing my toilet. Good thing I scrubbed it. Like, I didn't expect her to look in my toilet, but
And then there's me, stomach flu the morning of my home study, and I'm going, please don't go in our bathrooms. Please don't go. Oh,
Oh,
man. All
man.
right. So then opposite of that, what was the most challenging or emotionally taxing part of the entire process?
The entire process was definitely the weight of not knowing the fate of these kids that I had
Mm,
come to love.
yeah.
Our TPR hearing had been continued multiple times, 3 or 4 times, I think it was. So that was definitely stressful. And then when we actually had our TPR hearing, there was so much evidence to be presented that it ended up taking 3 court dates
Oh, wow.
over 3 months. They had to keep
Wow.
scheduling more. And I had to testify at each one. I was subpoenaed. So that was
Oh.
horrible also. But the wait, now our case is not typical in the amount of time that we had to wait. From our last TPR hearing to when the judge made his decision to terminate the rights, it took 7 months.
Oh, wow.
So we were waiting 7 months for our verdict, not knowing which way it was going to go. And then in our state, the biological parents then have 30 days to contest that decision. And in our case, they didn't, which I was really shocked about. But that was definitely the hardest part, just not knowing what was going to happen with these kids. Were they going to have safe permanency, or were they going to have to like transition back to a really rough life?
Right. Now, was there a reason that it took from the last TPR court date to when the judge gave his reasoning? Was there a reason for that timing, or it's just how long?
It was in part that it was a temporary judge in that county.
Okay.
At that time, they didn't. The one judge had retired, I believe, and then they were just using like temporary judges to replace him until they got a new judge. So it just, and there was so much evidence. Like it took so long to review everything that, it just drug out and out.
So after you got to that finalization, how did you feel your relationship with your children changed after that? Was it sort of a natural progression of the years leading up to it?
But I would say that it was a sigh of relief. It was more relaxed because with foster care, you have people in your home all the time. You have monthly, you have your caseworker, you have your CASA, your court appointed special advocate. You have your GAL, your guardian ad litem. They're all coming in your house monthly. So there's just a parade of people in and out and, documenting everything, So it was just a sigh of relief to kind of feel like our life could be our own.
Right.
I didn't have to document every second of our lives. And just, I think my kids got to relax too, because they got to like just settle in and, not have to see all of these people that they don't understand why they're here and, why they need to ask them questions.
And then with all of that, were you doing visits with the birth family as well? So like you had all these people in your house, but then were you having to go places for them to visit with the birth family?
For the first 8 months that the kids were placed with us, they had weekly visits, an hour and a half away. So the visits would last for 2 hours. So we would have to drive an hour and a half. They would do the supervised visit at that county's CYS office, and then we'd drive 2.5 hours home on a Wednesday in the middle of the day.
Oh, man.
So that was a lot to work around. Luckily, like my sister was able to help us a lot and do some of the visits. She was able to take the kids.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
Because, my husband and I both work full time.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
That's
home. A lot when you're both working full time. And I've heard that there's a foster, I call it foster mom site. It's an account where she shares a lot of awareness about the foster care system and being a foster parent. And she talks about that, like when both adults in the home are working, that is a lot going on, not just for you, but for the kids too. Was that, one way obviously you navigated that was by having your sister help, but were there other ways you were able to, was it, you had to just kind of work around your schedule, or how did that? play out?
Yeah, I work from home, so it was easier for me to adjust my schedule.
Okay.
And my husband would just have to like take vacation time or
Okay.
go in on like Saturday and
Yeah.
make up some hours.
Okay.
But yeah, it was taking the kids out of school in the middle of the
Yeah,
day
that's a lot. I
driving
know.
them an hour and a half, and they did not like the visits.
Sure.
They did not like going. That was part of the reason the visits were actually judged ordered to be stopped after we had the kids for 8 months, was because of the behaviors that they caused my kids to have. I guess
Sure.
their reactions
Mhm.
to the visits and what was going on in the visits, even though they were supervised. There were things being said to the kids that shouldn't have been said, and it was just a lot on them.
Absolutely.
And they're already in a situation where they don't really understand why they're not with the bio mom and dad, because they were so young at the time.
Right.
So it was tough on them.
Right. And so
Especially my daughter. She was older, so she definitely had bigger reactions than
more of
my
an
son.
understanding.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Well, and since the visits were supervised, was the person supervising able to document the things that were being said around,
Yeah.
and that's what helped stop the visits then?
Yeah, that
Okay.
and CYS had advised me, and my kids' attorneys had advised me to keep a log of all of the behaviors that occurred around visits. My son, who was, a year and a half at the time, would have night terrors after visits. And my daughter, who was 3, she would just have a lot of problems that at first would last maybe a day after the visits. And then eventually it was lasting about close to a week after the visits, her like acting out with these issues. So we just documented everything. And actually the daycare documented the behaviors that they saw as well, which I think really helped our case, because the judge is seeing that it's not just behavior that we're seeing here at home.
Right.
It was
Seeing
all
it with their other
encompassing.
caregivers as well.
Right. Now, and during that time, how were you and your husband known to the children? Were you mom and dad? Were you like what did they call you? Because especially for your daughter, she knew that these people she was going to visit were bio mom and dad. So what did she, if you're willing to share that?
They called us mom and dad from day one.
Okay.
But from what I understand, they had called their other foster parents mom and dad too. It's just,
Their
I think at
age.
that age, it's just you relate that to whoever is
Right.
your primary caregiver, and you call them mom and dad. And oddly enough, she never called her bio parents mom and dad.
Okay.
She called them by their first names. And
Okay.
she came to us already doing that. So
So
we
she
just
already
kinda-
had like a little bit of a disconnect there.
yeah, I think so. I mean, she had been in the system for so long at that point, with, just used to having visits with,
Right.
and she did see the bio mom a lot more frequently than the bio dad. So she would just call her like mom and then like her first name sometimes.
Okay.
But most of the time she just referred to her by her first name.
Okay.
That leads well into the question of how did you navigate the questions, either at that time or as time has gone on, about their birth families and foster care and adoption?
Yeah, it's delicate. Especially with my daughter. She has more questions. My
Right.
son only remembers us. So it's I think a little bit easier for him. But just we have had age appropriate conversations throughout them being with us, with her, about why they were removed from their biological parents and what her life looked like before she came to us. And we've read books, and we've watched movies, and we do have adoption in our family. So I think that has helped her as well. Being now that she's older, she does have more of a grasp on what happened, and she can talk more about why she was removed. And I think she has a greater understanding as to, why it wasn't a good situation for her to be raised in. So, but I tell the kids all the time that, their story is their own to tell. It's not mine to tell. It's completely up to them what they want to share, who they want to share it with. And we just let them know that we're always here to talk about any questions they might have about their biological family or about adoption in general. We just keep it, it's like an open book.
And you'd mentioned some of those books or movies. In our questions we had about strategies or resources that helped them process. Do you know any of the titles of those that you could share?
One of my daughter's favorites was called Adoption is Both. It's just like this little book, and it looks like little fingerprints, and they made them into people.
Okay.
It's really cute book for younger kids.
Nice.
And it talks about how adoption can make you both happy and sad kind of at the same time. And she actually still loves reading that book to this day.
Yeah.
So, because she still has some pretty big emotions at times.
I'm sure.
Right.
Absolutely. How old is she now?
She's 8.
So then your son, he was so young, but does he, and I mean, he is still a little on the younger side, does he ever ask questions, or does he just kind of listen to what his sister's asking and taking that information in? Or is it to him, it's not even a world that he's worried about yet?
He's not even worried about it yet.
Okay.
I mean, I think he understands that he's adopted. He knows what that means, but he never asks questions. He will listen to what she and I talk about. But I just think for him, it's just that he's always known us.
Right.
So it's not as big of a question mark in his life as it is to her. If that makes sense.
No, it does.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it makes sense. Looking back, what advice would you give to somebody else who's considering foster care or adoption from foster care?
I would say, to definitely expect the unexpected. It's never really a straight line with foster to adopt. You're thrown a lot of curveballs. So just be prepared for that. But I mean, there are a lot of children out there that need loving, safe families in foster care. Our agency that we adopted through, they're constantly looking for more foster families, and there's just such a need out there.
So with the foster care system, Jodi, is there any part of it that, like, when you're looking back on it, you're like, man, that needs changed to help not just the foster care parents, but the bio parents and more or less the children that sometimes get bounced back and forth, back and forth, back and forth for years on end? And I know reunification is such a big part here in our state, and that's a beautiful thing, and that should be the priority. But at what point do we need to look at it and say reunification is not going to be possible and kind of stop it rather than it going on for years on end?
The system definitely, I feel, and other foster parents have mentioned this as well, the system definitely gives the biological families a lot of chances, a lot of do-overs. And honestly, they know how to work the system. One of the reasons that one of our court hearings was continued was because one of our bio parents decided to just switch lawyers right before the hearing. And so then they had to continue it so that lawyer could get up to speed on the case. And, that happens very frequently, where they'll just do things to stall and give themselves some extra time. And honestly, it's just the kids that end up suffering for it, because they don't have that security of knowing what's going to happen in their lives, especially older kids. They don't know if they're going to get to go back to mom and dad, or if they're going to stay where they're at with, in a lot of cases, these children have been with the foster families since birth, and they don't know anything else. And I've read so many stories of like 3-4-year-olds getting reunified with people they barely even know. And it's really hard. And then a lot of times those kids go back into the system in a few months, because I understand that reunification is, always the goal if it's safe. But a lot of times I think it happens when it's not safe. And the kids are the ones that end up suffering for that. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, the system it needs to stop dragging things out so much for these kids. Like, it's terrible what they go through. I mean, they always say that the system fails these kids, and I think the system is trying the best that it can.
Yes.
But it's definitely pro giving a lot more chances than I think in a lot of situations is warranted.
Right.
I'm not speaking even just personally, but just from everything that I read and a lot of groups that I'm in.
I can agree with that.
What is one thing that you wish you had known before you started this process?
I'm not sure. Let me think about that one. I just guess I wish I'd known that it's hard to put into words, like how deeply all of this affects the kids. You know, it's especially older kids. It's so hard to just watch them try to process everything, and you know, you're there to try to help them with that and guide them through that, and you're not prepared for that. We take classes, but like, it doesn't prepare you for actually having that child in your home with these big emotions and trying to figure out, you know, what went wrong, were they responsible, which obviously they weren't, but it's just the emotions of the kids is what really impacted me. I think.
Well, and so with that, have you found that there's resources out there to help you, your husband, and the children cope through that? Whether it's family counseling, individual counseling, groups, like, are there those resources for those moments?
That's one of the things that we struggled with.
Okay.
With therapists, especially before my children were adopted. A lot of the therapists and stuff don't take the state insurance. So it's basically impossible to find someone to talk to my daughter. And that's something that definitely needs to be revamped, are the resources that are available to foster parents and adoptive parents. They're just, I mean, they may be out there, but I didn't have any luck finding them. And we even got, I remember we got like a sheet that had some different groups and stuff in. I looked into all of them, and it's like, it was a circle, like you couldn't find it on the website, or so yeah, there are not a lot of resources, which makes it hard.
Yeah, that's very hard. I think that is really discouraging that in this area there's so little, or there are so little counselors that will take these kids.
Part of me is questioning, like, why the agencies don't have counselors.
Yeah, and I think that would be a great thing to do, but they don't.
Or maybe not even on site, but counselors that, like, they work with. Like, they can say, these counselors are here for you and actually will do counseling sessions. Like, that's kind of surprising to me that that's not a thing.
Yeah.
Because it's something that the kids and the families so desperately need.
Right. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because it's a lot to go through. So how has adoption shaped your family dynamic and your perspective on parenting?
I mean, I feel like our family is complete at this time. Going through infertility and loss, like I had, I always felt like there was something missing in my life. And like, I've always wanted to be a mom, and now I am. So as a parent, I think I'm just like any other parent. I try to raise my kids with good morals and values, and you know, we do have some discussions on like nature versus nurture and that sort of thing, which I think is pretty common with adoptive families. But yeah, I mean, my kids are just normal, well-adjusted kids, and I'm so happy that, you know, they're able to have a stable life.
And coming from having little ones yet, do you see nature versus nurture coming into play with your kids? Like, do you see things that you're like, oh, that's definitely more of a bio family thing, or, oh, hey, I see you're picking that up from us? Like, do you see that as they're aging and gaining their own personalities?
We do. We see that a lot. And it's, my husband and I will sometimes be like, nature. And then like my daughter will say something and sound just like me, and he'll be like, nurture. It's just kind of something we throw out there, and the kids are like, what? And
Right.
we're like, nothing. But
do you see it more between your daughter, since she's older and has been with families, more so than your son who is younger and has been with you more?
Yeah, most definitely.
Okay.
Now he has had a thing or two, but definitely more with her, that we're like, oh yeah, we know where that came from.
Was there anything that you wanted to add, or any topics you wanted to cover that we did not talk about?
I think one of the big stigmas with foster to adopt is there's a big argument going around that, like, is it a legit thing, or should it just be foster care without the intent to adopt? There's a lot of discussions around that. And I think that just knowing a lot of kids can't go back to a safe situation, a lot of times it's not just the bio parents that aren't safe, but it's honestly the entire family dynamic that's not safe. You know, you have a lot of abuse and neglect and drug issues within that whole family unit. And I feel bad when people not foster to adopt, because a lot of times going in, they just know it's not going to be a situation that's going to be safe, but they still go through all of the steps, obviously, to give the parents a chance, which they should.
Absolutely.
I agree with that entirely, but like in our situation, our kids were supposed to have their TPR before they were even placed with us, but that didn't end up happening until a year or so down the road after they were with us. But so it's like they always knew that our case was heading that direction. And I think that's fairly common. But I don't like the stigma that people think that people that want to adopt from foster care just want a free ride, or, they can't pay for private adoption or whatever. That's really not the case. Like, for us personally, we didn't really mind either way if we had a newborn or not, but I was perfectly fine with my children being the ages that they were when they came to us. And I guess I wish more people were accepting of foster to adopt as a way to build your family, but that you're not just trying to get a free kid to think of another way to put it. But
No, I do think that's a stigma that I have seen. Is it's almost like this, well, we couldn't afford to do it that way. It's like, that's not why people choose to do it. I mean, sometimes, of course, finances can play a factor in your decision making, but you shouldn't foster a child if your only reason is, well, I don't have like, that's not the purpose of fostering ever. The purpose is to love on a child who needs a home, and that can look different ways for different people, and what ages, and whether it's private or through foster care, and
if it ends in adoption or not.
Right. And yeah, that definitely is. And then the stigma that we have gotten is, of course, well, you bought a child. And it's like, it's just, people are just not accepting of, there are different ways to grow your family.
Well, and one of the stigmas, and we've talked about it, is, well, why are you fundraising for your private adoption? If you can't afford to pay for the adoption, how are you going to afford to raise the child? Two different things completely. I have the financial backing to take care of the child. It's the expenses that go along with the adoption process that's not there. I mean, you can't tell me there's many people out there that have the $40,000 to $70,000 to just say, here's for the legal fees, the hospital fees, the stay, all of that. So I think that's one of the areas where foster to adoption, private adoption, whatever avenue it is, that our world needs to look at and take those stigmas away. Take that money stigma away from both sides of it. No matter who's doing whichever avenue they choose, we're doing it because we want to love a child. We're doing it because we want to bring a child into our family and let them grow and develop in an amazing, healthy environment. And that's one of the things that kind of irritates me, period, about it, is the stigma that both avenues have on. I mean, that's not it at all for any of us. So I just have one other question. Will you guys, you feel complete as a family, but have you ever thought, or would you ever discuss fostering again in the future, or you're done?
We have talked about it because specifically if our kids' biological parents happen to have another child,
Mm-hmm.
so they like to keep the siblings together. So that's really the only instance that we had talked about,
Okay.
that we would consider again, is if there was, a sibling that was born. But other than that, I just, the whole process is a lot of hoops to jump through and so much stress on your lives. At this point, I just want to enjoy being a mom.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Enjoy the babies you've been blessed with.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Jodi, thank you so much for giving us your time today and sharing your heart for adoption and for the need in the foster care field for more foster workers. As we've said, very much needed. Even if you're not listening in Pennsylvania, we can promise it's still needed in your area. So we can take a moment to close in prayer. God, I thank you so much today for Jodi, for her testimony, for the beautiful children you have blessed her and her husband with, and through the means in which they did that. It's just a truly beautiful story to hear of these children in need of a home and a home in need of children. And I thank you for bringing the two of them together in this beautiful way. And I thank you for her willingness to share her experiences today. I pray for listeners today who may be in the midst of deciding what way they want to go with. Should they adopt? Should they foster to adopt? And I pray that this information will bring them some clarity and some guidance today. And God, I thank you for the beautiful day we're having. And in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. You can find us on any major podcast platform and on Instagram at Adoption Side by Side to listen to more episodes and follow along in our personal adoption journeys as they change.